Welcome to the fourth episode of Two Promoters, One Pod. Hi,
Yes.
Gav.
How
Okay.
are you, mate? How are you?
Really good. We've had to let the listeners into it, I guess they should know that we're recording today on our first day of release. So this morning, 3 episodes went out to the actual world, the actual real people listen to us talking.
I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel slightly more nervous now getting into episode 4 than I did getting into the first 3, because the first 3 were just kind of an idea, and it was between you and I, and Brian was messing about with a podcast for a bit, whereas now it's about like, oh, love those 3 episodes, get a fantastic reaction, like, can't wait for the next one. So there's actually a bit of pressure to make this one good.
No, I was shitting myself last week, if I'm honest. I'm a listener to your other podcast, Damnation Versus. I listened to most of the episodes and I thoroughly enjoyed them. So I was quite nervous last week, and this week I'm feeling good. I've had loads of like nice messages from lots of random people that I don't really get WhatsApp messages from, sending me nice things today, saying I've been listening to the podcast. One guy sent me, Ross sent me a message saying I was ready to take the piss out of you and like 2 white guys over 40, but actually it was great. So keep going. So yeah, it's good. Nice.
Tell me this though, did you get a message from Hayden Britland?
Yeah. Oh no, you sent me his message actually.
That's right. He just straight to episode 2, didn't bother with Dungeon Escape Plan or Slayer, just wanted to know if he could make it through an episode talking about agents, that he was going to come out unscathed, and he was like, well, my name get dragged in, but it was fairly gentle, so we were forgiven for
I
that.
think I did say he'd be listening. So yeah, he was.
He's Hayden, you need to now go and listen to the rest of the episodes, mate. It's not just going to be that one. But yeah, I mean, the reaction has been surprisingly good. I mean, the reaction to Damnation Versus was always fairly positive, but to put it in context, the Serena Cherry episode, the Serena from Svalbard, the day after they split with the Holy Road debacle, was the biggest and most successful podcast that Damnation Versus had done. And the reason for that ultimately was because it was more like a journalism podcast. It was me asking about the situation, and people just wanted that content the next day. So there's a lot of people listening to that one who probably weren't that interested in Damnation Versus or Damnation. Otherwise, all 3 of the podcasts that went out today have overtaken that first day's downloads on the most successful Damnation Versus podcast. So you must be doing something right, mate.
Happy days.
You've brought something to the table, that's for sure.
That's my mum and all her friends having a listen, I think.
Right, mum, and every device you've got, right? Amazon, Apple, Spotify.
Leave it playing.
Aye.
Amazing.
So, you were quite keen in getting into some questions before we get into. I think the topic for today is going to be our hunt for headliners, but I think you get some questions in the Arc Tangent board first.
Yeah, there was some like we'll chuck this out regularly. Like if people want to know stuff, the point of the podcast is that we can talk about stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So I think there aren't many questions that we wouldn't answer. So you can ask whatever you want. There's some great ones on here. I quite like this one, particularly as we're going to talk about headliners today. So Stephen Edwards says, how do your headliners inform the rest of your bill? Do you book smaller acts around your headliners, or is it just whatever you'd like to book, assuming it makes sense economically?
Well, from a Damnation point of view, I mean, it's financially driven. If you think about what you've got available for you, let's say for the sake of argument, just talk sake, it's £100,000 budget for that day at Damnation, and you're willing to pay, I don't know, anything between 20 and 40, 50 grand for your headliner. Now, if you pay 50 grand for a headliner, then that's going to make the decision for you. You're not going to have a row of giant acts underneath it, because the money just won't be available. Whereas if you book a band for 15 or 20 grand to be a headliner, then the bands underneath that could also be 15, 20 grand bands. So it's financially driven. There is a wee bit, if you get a big black metal headliner, you're not necessarily going to go and book another bunch of smaller black metal bands. The same with death metal, hardcore, whatever. So it's for Damnation, it's financially driven mostly. It dictates what the rest of the lineup's going to look like.
Do you have, well, let me explain to you how I do it at ATG, and I imagine you must do something similar at Damnation, but or maybe not. But our Tangent, there are various genres that I feel like we are now expected to hit. And
Yeah.
I made a list of them the other day, and there's about 7 or 8, and it's like, prog, post rock, post metal, math rock, post hardcore. There's a few others in and around, and some electronic stuff. And so one thing I'm trying to do is get a certain number of bands in those genres. Now, sometimes those bands will be small. So if you look at Arctangent this year, there probably aren't any really big post-hardcore bands, but there's some small ones. Like the sort of techie metal, like Meshuggah and Animals as Leaders, that's quite heavily served by the top end of the lineup this year. So it will vary from year to year. So I am trying to hit there's certain genres. I am definitely not trying to get a festival that is all post rock or all post metal or whatever.
No,
And
absolutely.
presumably you have
Yeah, I
some
mean that. I
genres you
mean
want to hit.
for us, it's like there's your death metal, black metal, post metal, doom, and then unfortunately for thrash is always the cousin that gets left out. I mean, we try to always make sure there's some sort of thrash there, and if we can get post rock, and that's obviously a huge. I mean, when you start to get into the mix of what's actually what was death metal to power violence, and then what's power violence to hardcore, you can start. I mean, there's a lot of subgenres, but those ones as a sort of default are the ones you get. We don't particularly go, we don't look at say, oh, what is prog or what's no prog. But if you get, I mean, if you think the ocean's prog, then that's about as much a damnation band as you'll see, So
Yeah.
but for us, it's always like we're never going to put a lineup that doesn't have any death metal on it, and we're not going to put a lineup that doesn't have any black metal on it or doom. But those are probably the three big ones, and then after that, it's the bits you can get. I mean, something we're looking at say, oh, Converge were a surprising choice for Damnation, not particularly, but you can see why somebody might think that if the
Yeah. And
lineups.
yeah. So do you also think about, like, I've got my headliner locked in, Cradle of Filth
Yeah,
this year. Do you then think I could really complement that booking with some, because at 2000 Trees in particular, I will look at the headliner and I'll be like, right, so I've got Gaslight Anthem headlining. Okay, I'm going to book Spanish love songs. I tried to book the Menzingers, it would have been perfect. Manchester Orchestra works with it. You know, there's a genre of bands, sort of like heartland rock bands, that fit with Gaslight Anthem. In
yeah,
fact, there's a whole scene that is like inspired by sort of Bruce Springsteen. And basically, if you book Gaslight Anthem, you may as well book a load of them.
yeah.
Do you have that?
Yeah, probably because we're looking at over even if it's the 2 days, if you include the pre-show, I mean, what's that going to be? Less than 50 bands, so it's not quite the same scope over hundreds of bands of being able to book. Let's get 5 or 6 big names. So with Cradle of Filth, actually, on the bands, you probably do the opposite. If you got a huge name in black metal or death metal, you would make sure you went out and tried to get a big name in doom because you want to make sure when people are coming, there's definitely 3 or 4 bands that they're going to be like, right, I can get, and we can usually tell when you're putting that together. So somebody this year is going to be like, might not, well, probably won't be interested in Cradle of Filth
Yeah.
because they are bands they want to see 200 stab wounds and fuming mouth and the nails, they like that they're not going to be there for. But you need to make sure there's enough. You can't just put 200 stab wounds in the post on hope that some death metal fans going to go and pay 80 quid to come.
Yeah. And that's my thinking, is that if I book, um, let's just pick a random two, like if I book Enter Shikari for 2000 Trees, which I have done and I will again in the future, and I don't book any other bands that their fans would like, you're a festival like 2000 Trees, which is going to cost you like 180 quid or whatever, the people aren't going to pay 180 quid just to
No,
see one band.
no.
So you've got to think about, like, are you appealing to different pockets of people? Whereas I feel like at Arctangent and Damnation, it's probably more like most people are quite open. They will come and watch some bands, and
And do you do
you
that
know,
when, let's take Enter Shikari for example, and do you make sure you spread that across the 3 days, or do you try and load up a day?
no, because I'm like a festival purist where I believe in the weekend.
Yeah,
I hate day tickets. Stop buying day tickets. Come for the weekend. Enjoy it. Like, really relax. It's like a holiday.
yeah,
That's my
yeah.
thing. I don't like. I like. We want to sell tickets. I'm not criticizing people who buy day tickets, but really, yeah, I'm spreading them out.
Yeah. Yeah, you
across
want people
the
to come for the full experience. I mean, that
yeah,
whole idea of coming in, I said I was only there for the one day, when 4 days, especially if you
yeah,
show up on the Sunday and everybody else is there since like a Thursday pre-show
yeah,
and absolutely bust.
yeah,
So
and well, exactly. And the other thing, agents are always saying to me like, "Oh, you got to get this band under that band. Did they have a similar band before
yeah,
them?" And I'm like, "That's bullshit," because you're talking about like how Download or Reading would do it, but at Arctangent or 2000 Trees, people will watch the penultimate band, then they will go and get a beer, and they will go and watch another band on a different stage,
yeah.
then they will come back to the main stage. So why do the bands have to be
There's
similar?
sometimes there's nothing worse than agents in particular, managers telling you how you should build your event. I mean, like, well, listen, mate,
Yeah,
if you want to go and start your own event, then bash on. You know, it's like
yeah,
the reason we've sold all these tickets is because we kind of know what we're doing to this particular fan base. I'm not suggesting I could go and book Leeds and Reading and know how to cater to that audience, but I have a history of catering to the damnation audience. How about you just let me do that
yeah,
instead of telling me where the band should be? And also, I knew when you said, "Oh, we should do a Q&A," I said, as soon as we get started in the question, we'll be away. We were
yeah,
away
yeah.
for
Okay, do you want one more? Do
that.
you want one more question?
Right, come on, Matt. One more, then we'll get into it because otherwise we'll be like, "Oh, there's the 30 minutes we allocated."
Okay. Gary Metherell says, "What is the timescale on getting the major bands locked in? Do you start planning for the next year's festival as soon as this year's ends, or do you give yourself a while off?" Um, yeah. So, well, the answer to that is I made an offer yesterday for 2025. So I have started booking for 2000 Trees for 2025. As soon as for me, the bigger bands, as soon as they are planning what they're going to do, then it's worth just getting an offer out.
Yeah,
I kind of, we'll talk about headliners later, but I know who I want to headline every year. Like Mogwai would always be on my list. So might as well make the offer early. The Mars Volta would all be on my list. Might as well make the offer early. Same with Ent Shikari or someone, or
yeah,
whoever. Do
yeah.
you? How do
And
you do it?
that's even, it's got to the stage, it's forced, it's not a choice anymore. It's like that's the way it was starting to go closer to that beforehand because we had Opeth booked before Damnation. So they played 2019. So before 2018 happened, we had Opeth booked for the following year. So that was already a thing. Then the pandemic made it so much worse. Then everybody's plans were getting punted, and it's like 2 years in advance, which led to its own problems because we were booking a lot of bands like Destruction and Toxic Holocaust, and these bands that weren't massive to start with, they booked them almost 2 years in advance, and then ultimately shit happens. You know what I mean? The
Yeah,
drummer falls out with the singer. They get offered a tour in America with a bigger band. The finances don't work. They're going to record an album. Then we put that lineup together, and bands are just falling off left, right, and centre, which would never really happen before. The odd one, but everybody was falling off because you're like, these bands have been booked for 24 months and changed agents and managers and had all sorts going on. So I'm not I'm not particularly fond of it, but ultimately, if you want to get some of these bands, I mean, by the time we'd find, we'll talk about this at the headliner bit, but by the time we got to the end of this year, I was already flapping about trying to get the headliner, when I say last year, the headliner for this year, because everybody was all getting snatched up for tours. They were stretching right into 2025.
yeah.
So, aye, unfortunately, not only is it a case of waiting till after it or giving yourself a break, you kind of need to start now. And we've also made an offer for a band to play 2025, which just seems insane at the moment.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I always we always joke in our team at 2000 Trees in Arctangent that we used to have the quiet period, which is like September, October, November for us, really December as well. And it was like quite relaxing. And we used to like every so often, you get like a Facebook memory comes up, and I'll get one from 10 years ago, and it's like you've announced one band in February,
Yeah,
and now I'm like I've just announced the entire Arctangent lineup. So I mean, I've been booking that since March last year, and that's just the way the industry's gone.
yeah,
Download have announced all their bands. Outbreak have announced most of their bands. You're in November and you've announced a load of your bands already. So it's
yeah.
basically if everyone else is doing it,
You need to
you
get
want
out
people
there.
to buy tickets for you, not them, don't you? So you got to get out there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it does push
Um,
it through, which takes us on nicely then to
yeah.
the topic for this podcast, the struggle to get headliners, the hunt to get a headliner, because it's I feel like everyone you talk to at whatever level, like local deals to your downloads, it seems like trying to get bands locked in now to headline is more difficult than ever.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's really tough. I think there's a number of factors of why it's tough in the world that we're in, the rock and heavy metal, well, heavy music world, is because firstly there are a lot of events, right? Loads and loads of festivals. Secondly, there are Live Nation have started doing loads of outdoor shows, which has affected me at 2000 Trees. Not festivals, like they get like 5 bands and they stick them in a park in Hull
Yes.
or Plymouth. There's a thing happens in Bristol where I live, up on the Downs, and it's like 10 bands in a day, and it's just a day thing. But all of these are like Placebo, for instance, are playing it. It's a band that might play 2000 Trees one year.
Yeah.
It's like competition, so that the amount of stuff that the bands can do, never mind their own touring, has just gone like through the roof. Also, you got like loads of festivals in Europe, bunch of stuff in America happens throughout the summer, so it's like
And
really competitive.
but how is that? Because that's another one. I felt like getting up to get into the pandemic, we'd done okay, and it seemed like you could get right up to like getting your like Opeth beforehand, and it was just like some years you'd be like, oh, right, okay, but the first or second choice wasn't available, but we got that band, and we're always pretty happy with it. And then coming into 2020, so 2021 would have been Ministry, so that was fine before they pulled out. We had Converge playing with them, and it was like, okay, that was good. We done good ticket sales with it. And then get into last year, it was like a bunch of bands weren't available, but it was okay. Electric Wizard had kind of done their thing, headlined everywhere else around about the world, and we're due to come back to Damnation, and it was fine. And then this year, it was like before we'd even kicked the ball. I mean, I'm talking like no money offered. It was like the bands that weren't available: Meshuggah, Clutch, Sepultura, Testament, Cannibal Corpse, Behemoth, Obituary, Malevolence, Baroness, Zealand, the Dillinger Escape Plan that we have talked about previously. And then if you're thinking about, right, well, who is left? Emperor, but Emperor are doing Glasgow and Ireland already. And it was like, before you even sit down to start thinking about headliners, was that 10, 15 bands already off the table? For an event
Yeah.
like Damnation, it's not going to really go after an arch enemy or that ilk of band. It's just like, well, there's no real point doing that. They're going to either be at Bloodstock or download anyway. So why try and book that type of band? So you're a bit like, what's left? And you're a bit like, thank God, Cradle of Filth. Because with it was a bit like, where were we going? What was the next step after that?
Yeah, and what you've just said there is really gets to the nub of the fear, because as if you're you or me, the whole thing rides on getting the right lineup, and more than anything, it rides on the headliner. Now, I hate the fact that people focus on the headliners at Arctangent and 2000 Trees, because I spend so much time making the bill really strong.
Yeah,
Even the 100 quid bands are really great, and that's what I enjoy about my job. But ultimately, people are like, "Where's your headliner? Where's your headliner? Where's your headliner?" We announced Meshuggah for Arctangent, and it pleases some people. Everyone else is like, "Oh God, this isn't going to be the year for me."
yeah,
And at that point, I don't know if Explosions in the Sky are coming. I don't know if I'm certain Mogwai are just never coming. And so you you just like you never know what you're going to get, and you're desperate to get something right. So even if you download Festival, like how low down their list were Queens of Stone Age, Fallout Boy, a download
yeah, yeah.
right at
As well,
they're not even on the first list, right? I
there's
mean, they're not.
there's a secondary list.
Yeah,
Because you think
there's
about,
like the panic list you make.
yeah,
We've all done that, and I've booked bands. I probably shouldn't mention who they are in the past to headline my festivals that they're on the panic list. They're not on the fucking like here's my 40 bands that I'd like to headline the festival list.
yeah.
They're on the we've run out of those bands. They're all playing download or wherever else.
And
Um,
if you can imagine, like, so I was reading through the type of bands, your Clutches and Sepulturas and Meshuggahs, that Damnation would be like, we'd snap them up. I mean, Download's version of that's your Green Days, Pearl Jams, fucking Ramstein. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
Metallica, Iron Maiden when they're doing that cycle, but to get those ones in, but they're just Foo Fighters. So I think I'm playing. So you've got all those bands that you would have. I mean, I've got no insight into this, but you'd think if you were download, you'd be like, that's the ones that we're after. And ultimately, I'm a bit like, I'll. There's something about when they done Bring Me Horizon finally last year. I like that. Also, I'm a bit like I can't see Iron Maiden, Metallica at the top of one more poster about what to rip what's left of my head out. You know what I mean? I'm like, I've done that now for 20, 25 years. There needs to be something. There seemed to be a point in the mid 2000s where Slipknot just went for that special guest slot, which was seemed locked in forever. Someone made a decision to make them a headliner, and then it just became a headliner, and it was just
Yeah.
accepted. It was so that some of these bands, I feel like they just need that nudge, and then once they get it, Bring My Eyes will just be, oh, that's it. We're a download headliner now. So if that works out for Fall Out Boy or Queens of the Stone Age, then fair play, I suppose. But I mean, are those bands ultimately are they any bigger or smaller than Avenged Sevenfold, who again are one of those bands I always felt like, oh, they're the ones beside the Iron Maiden, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Tool, and then you give Avenged Sevenfold also. Like that's the one that came off the panic list. But then maybe that's not true. Maybe Avenged Sevenfold are
I,
absolutely massive.
I mean, I just think all those three bands that are headlining Download this year are penultimate headliners, and they would rather have an Iron Maiden above them. But I I I can relate to that because I've had in the past, a very recent past, at both my festivals, bands that aren't actually as big as you'd want them to be in the headline slot. If you
Yeah,
look at the Arctangent, like you got like someone like Devon Townsend headlining a festival that Converge are headlining another day. I mean, the size difference in those bands is vastly different. So,
yeah.
you know, it's really tough to get the lineup you want. And speaking totally honestly, even at Arctangent this year, where it looks like I got the lineup I wanted, those three headliners aren't actually my first choice headliners. Only one of them is. So it's like you just never get your first choices, do you?
No, I mean you don't. I mean I suppose when Paul and I sit down with like because we don't even really need the discussion because it's the same again as you say. We know already exactly the kind of bands we want who we're looking for. A lot of them on that list, and then when you start to go down the list of the small bands like your Cult Leaders and your Rouse, they're just bands that just are perpetually on the. It just bounces a year forward until you can get them over to play and make their schedules work. But aye, it's not ideal. It's annoying. That headliner band role, even at events like Damnation, it's annoying how important they seem to be to people that 9 times out of 10 either don't really like the headliner or are happy to leave before the headliner, and they'll
Yeah.
openly admit that. It's like there's six bands on the bill, and that's the type of music they're into, and they want to see it in a big arena with great production and want to go crazy with another 6,000 fans. But ultimately, until that headliner's announced, it's just the focus. Everybody's just absolutely focused on what the headline is, and you're a bit like, I don't understand it because I tell you what, I come to Art Tangent every single year. And you had a year where the headliners didn't suit my taste at all. The Shellac here, Shellac, Glass John, somebody else, and it was neither here nor there. I'm a bit like the time Art Tangent fucking bands are starting at 10:30 in the morning. If I don't particularly fancy seeing Shellac, then I will be in a tent somewhere and like drinking White Russians. So I get the point. If the rest of your bill, that's the way you build your festival. The headliners, the be all the end all. You spend all your money in it, and the rest of the bill is just kind of what you throw together. But Damnation and Art Tangent are the exact opposite of it. It's like all the focus goes in building through the bill, and then you get a
Yeah.
headliner you can get your hands on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a question on the forum earlier on, which we won't answer now. We'll answer another day. But it was about like, how do I decide who headlines the fourth stage at Arctangent? Because that's their favourite slot of the festival, and that's the one that clashes with the main stage. So that person is basically saying, you know, I mean, I was loving that question because it's basically saying, I love your booking, and I don't care about your headliners. I care about the
Yeah.
smaller bands, which is great because headliners is like it's just pretty boring. But how do you feel about the like the sort of the sales element of it? Do you find that part of the job stressful, and the fact that the headline, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but headliners really are just the driver of whether or not you're going to end up losing your house?
Yeah, I mean, I was
Um,
thinking this earlier just with how, because what I liked about the reaction to the first three podcasts is we were quite honest on them without being reckless. And there was definitely someone, I think someone posted, she's like, called that, I shouldn't have said that, like podcast. And I was like, hey, you know what? I think we should lean into that a wee bit more. And I'm quite happy to do an episode of just how serious this year's Damnation is in relation to the future of Damnation and
yeah,
me being a promoter. And we can get into that and just have like last year not being successful. And ultimately, I can't sustain. Damnation's just mine as much as Paul's an important part. Financially, it's just mine. I can't sustain another year of not making money. And don't panic before that episode comes out because we're selling hundreds of tickets and it'll be absolutely fine. But I feel like because the ticket sales are so well, to answer your question, because Cradle of Filth and Nails and Bleeding Through have pushed so many ticket sales so early in the year, I'm finally taking the blinders off a wee bit because I think I had tunnel vision. Like, I'm just doing Damnation and we're just making it work. But ultimately, if I was sitting here without 3,000 tickets sold and we'd done 1,000 even at this point, I'd be starting asking questions like, having chats with my wife, like, what can we sustain again? What can we do in our 12 years if Damnation doesn't make money? So it is important that your headliner is right. And when we booked Cradle of Filth, you're a bit like, that's a big name, but is that a big name to Damnation fans? Or in the flip side of that, is it going to work better because it's not for Damnation fans? You like Ministry, you're going to drag in a fan base who otherwise might not know or come to Damnation, and
Yeah.
that's healthy as well. Without going pop punk, you can bring in a band that there is a portion of Damnation fans that like, especially the old school set, and also bring Cradle of Filth fans who otherwise wouldn't come to Damnation. Hopefully, come experience that as a full day, saying, "Oh, Jesus Christ, a lot more going on here than just seeing Cradle of Filth," and then hopefully they come back next year.
Yeah, and that's a really important point, I think, is that, and I was explaining this to our sales and marketing team the other day, is that not everyone has to like the headliner that you've booked. You are booking them because they are big and they will appeal to an audience. Now, I think there's at both my festivals, there's a certain amount of gatekeeping from like the old school people that have been coming for years, and they think the festival should book this sort of band. So Arctangent was much more like math rock and
Yeah,
post rock. And
yeah.
they're like, wow, fucking hell, what's Opeth? Fucking Opeth. Devon Townsend, what's this shit old man prog music?
I
And I'm
want
like,
battles
look,
every single year. Battles.
yeah. I'm like, seriously, you we're still booking all the bands you like. There is a new flavor and it is expanding the festival and making it financially sustainable because Arctangent with 3,000 people there like it was in year one is not sustainable financially. And the same with 2,000 Trees. It's like you've got to keep growing. You've got to keep like adjusting your audience, pleasing the old people that have been going for a while and bringing on new people. Because
Yeah,
otherwise you just stagnate and you just end up like every other festival, which eventually doesn't exist anymore.
yeah, yeah.
So
I love that. I love how I always like that analogy. It's like you go and you say, "All right, we're having Chinese for tonight. Right, brilliant. Well, there's a chicken curry, my favourite. Oh, there's your satay. Oh, I love it. Prawn crackers, fried rice. This is my favourite than ever. Oh no, sweet and sour chicken balls there. Fuck you. Dinner, dinner
you've
right.
ruined it.
I'm eating none of it. It's a disgrace. It's disgusting. I hate sweet and sour chicken. You're like, you don't eat the sweet and sour. You know what I mean? That's just your headliner. That is it. You know what I mean? Leave the
Yeah.
sweet and sour alone and just go to
Yeah.
enjoy your patty. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It's like, but people get so fucking worked up about it. Like their opinions are like every fucking band in this bill. I've seen situations where you put a poster and it's got 6 or 7 bands on the poster, and like, this is my dream lineup. You've been in my head, you've been in my Spotify playlist, and you've booked my dream lineup. And then 10 bands are on it, but the other 3 they don't like. And it's like, I'm not coming this year. Like, what the fuck? I mean, change. The 7 bands are still there. It's not like they cancelled. It's almost like you're infecting their taste by having a thrash band on there when they only like
Yeah.
death or vice versa. And it doesn't make any sense. But the truth of the matter is, it's like it's all about perception. If that's the way they feel, then you need to make sure you tackle it.
It
And
is quite hard to. I don't know how you. I suspect you deal with this better than I do, but I've been explaining to people recently what a weird job it is because you basically sit in your room on your computer for months on your own, and then at some point you show the world, like you got your lineup posters behind you. You show the world. Here's my lineup poster, and then half of the world goes, "That's fucking shit. You've ruined this festival. I used to love this festival," and it's like it's I find it impossible not to be affected by that. And I'd like, and that's why I would like to book Deftones because no one can criticize you for Deftones.
yeah,
And there are those untouchable bands, but every other band is just divisive.
yeah.
Some people like them and some people don't. There
I,
are very few universal.
I'll tell you, I swear to you, James, the year you do book Deftones, prepare yourself because someone is coming on the internet to tell you how shit they are and how you hold it. But it's just, I mean, I'm not. I've went full circle with it. At the start, it's like it's precious. It is your baby. It is something you're putting your time and effort in, day out, and then you put it out, and then people have a go at it, and then you do it for so many years, realize that's just the way. And ultimately, people having a go at it is not as good as people being indifferent. People being indifferent is the worst. You put stuff out and you get no reaction
Mm.
whatsoever. That's the killer. People at least engaging with it means there's some sort of feeling towards it. And then where I'm at now with a bit more confidence is I'll tackle people. Like I will, if you like somebody will say, "Oh, look how far this has fallen." I mean, rather than just sit there and be like, "Oh, the Tesco help desk," and "Oh, please sir, how can we make this better for you?" It's like, but from where like the top of your mountain, your opinion. It's like it's just your opinion, mate. And it's ultimately when you get back, why do you need to be so defensive? I'm like, because that's the reason. You can have it both ways. You can have someone who's going to be an organizer who's going to be transparent and here and take the criticism, take the praise, and then ultimately at the other side, when you're getting slagged off, not also push back because I do care. You know what I mean? And it's all
Yeah.
you're entitled to your opinion, but I'm also entitled to give my opinion back, especially when uh, I'm the one that feels like I've invested in it. And a lot of these people come back like, if I actually known you were going to comment, I'd never have said that. You know what I mean? I just wanted to say something on the internet, and it does get. I think I'm at a point now. I would rather have. I'd rather have any sort of feedback than no feedback. I mean, no feedback in itself. Just when you put, I mean, people were saying about that the Cradle of Filth when I was talking to a friend, like, I don't know how this is going to go tomorrow. And he says, well, remember the OPEF one? Ultimately, OPEF one of the biggest bands you ever booked. And no one said anything wrong. There was nothing wrong with it, but there also wasn't a great deal of excitement about it either. And you're a bit
Yeah.
like, you were buzzing about the fact for months and months you booked OPEF, you put it in, and people like, hey, okay, OPEF. And I was like, right, okay, fuck's sake. That was quite, then bust my bubble there. So,
Would you have them back though? You'd
which
have them back, right?
I'd have them back. I'd have them back. I feel like, do you know what? I feel like OPF have had this sort of resurgence again. I feel like they're back up there and everyone's enjoying it. One of those bands that just kind of people ebb and flow with without much changing really in OPF camp. People kind of buy into it again and then lose a wee bit of interest and then buy into it again.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a massive fan, but I've got a question for you. Is that because this is something I think about a lot of both my festivals? Is there a next level of band that you want to go for? Like, what is that next level of headliner? Do you want to go there? Do you not want to go there?
I don't know if it's. I don't even know if it's possible. I don't know if it's feasible because if we ever do an episode about dream headliners, I've booked everyone we can book, and that would be other than the names I've said that I'm not particularly looking going. Those are my dream headliners. My dream headliners, if I was ever to put on an event, would be a Perfect Circle, Deftones, Tool. Obviously, that's just way out there. 9 Inch Nails. So let's say you were just another 10,000 up from where Damnation is. 9 Inch Nails, Deftones, A Perfect Circle are probably, I mean, a very, very big art tangent. Or even Trees. Let's say Trees at 20,000. That 9 Inch Nails, Tool, A Perfect Circle are probably just about within touching distance. That's my dream. But it's not a dream for Damnation. I think once you
No.
do that, you no longer have Damnation as such, you know. So
Yeah. What
I
about
don't.
those?
There's no goal to get there. So that next rung was really just not that much bigger than the rung we were already at with OPEF. I mean, to get a Miss Sugar, a Clutch, these kind of bands, you're a bit like, right, they're all in that same sphere.
Are you interested in bands like Trivium or
No,
Machine Head or stuff like that?
I mean, again, I in with the Arch Enemy thing, Lamb of God, Trivium, Machine Head. They're just the Metal Hammer bands. And I say that without any disrespect to them. I've been many a mosh pit to all those bands and enjoyed them. But I'm on a Marth, all these kind of type of bands. It's Metal Hammer music, isn't it? It's I think is well serviced at Bloodstock. I think it's well serviced at Download. I think it's well
Yeah.
serviced all their arena tours. And I feel like people are buying into Damnation because they want something a bit different. How many Machine Head fans and Trivium fans are really that interested in Human Mouth? You know what I mean? And what I don't want is a festival where people aren't showing up at 12 in the morning because they are excited about Coffin Milk and Frail. And likewise with yourself, your stage is open at 11 o'clock, half 10, and they're packed because there's no full of Trivium fans that are
Yeah.
waiting to see Trivium.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's tricky when you've got other festivals. I have this at 2000 Trees, but I don't really have this arc tangent. But you've got those like Download and stuff that are booking those bands,
Yep.
and so that does make it Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, Machine Head, I just think are the world's most inconsistent band. If they would just do the good stuff, it's like they're
Aye.
world-beating,
I
amazing
mean,
band.
they're a great
Um,
band. I'll always go see Machine Head. If I'm at a festival and they're playing, I will go and see Machine Head. Do you know what I mean? That doesn't mean it doesn't make them a damnation band. You know,
yeah,
it's aye, it's just the one for us. So, aye, it's been tough. I mean, to kind of wrap this one up and get like our recommendation on the record section, it has been tough, and I think it's going to get. I think it's going to get tougher unless something changes in a sense that there's less competition or I mean, I struggle to see because what's happening as well is the fees are going up with the competition. So then it's
yeah,
getting even tougher because then the bands only really need to play where they used to do 3 festivals. So they can just get the same festival for one now and just land in Germany, play one festival, land in UK, play one festival, go back to wherever. Whereas in the past, I felt like there's a bit more hunger with these bands to play some more events because maybe the pot wasn't quite so big in one event.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy to be open about like budgets, but headliner budget, right? In in 2019, the most I would have paid a headliner would have been 35 grand, and now it is like 100 grand, and sometimes that is more or less the same band.
Yeah.
It's like the same band 5 years later.
Yeah, and we're not talking
It's like,
about Sleep Token, who became an arena band. It's
yeah,
literally the same band. I
yeah,
mean, we had a band booked in 2019 or 2020, and it was 7 grand. And then when it came out, I was like, nothing had changed. No album had been released, no press had been done, and we offered 15 and never get an answer. Like always laughed at it. Like nothing had changed except a pandemic, and I don't understand why we're responsible to make up that loss. But
no,
then everyone all started paying those fees, and as soon as the band gets paid at once somewhere, they were clearly right.
yeah.
They got what they wanted.
I think we should be clear we're not targeting Hayden with this
No,
particular.
Hayden wishes he had 100 grand bands.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing.
So right, Jesus, here we go again. I don't know how long this one's droned on for now. We will try to keep these short and sweet. A shout out to our sponsor, who now that he's heard the first 3 episodes, was absolutely delighted. Said people have already started using the code, which is pod15 or at losebrews.co.co. Losebrews at fucking hell, James. This is me
Mate, you can
sober.
do it. I believe in you.
Can you tell me what it is?
I can't read it because I'm losebrews.co.uk. Is that it?
losebrews.co.uk.
Got
Pod
some banging
15.
hot sauces.
Go and get yourself some banging hot sauces. Last night I had burgers with the family, and he's got a slapping pickle one, which only really works in burgers. Don't try it in chicken; it's not very great. But on the burger, it's spectacular. It's my favourite sauce he's got on a burger. So go and pick yourself up a bottle of that Damnation one, Creeper, Bring Me Horizon, whatever else he's got on there. And once again, Lou, thanks for the support.
Yeah.
Right,
Legend.
before I lose the ability of chat, what have you got for us? What have you been listening to?
Well, I was gonna because we're talking about headliners, I was gonna recommend a little band that you may or may not have heard me talk about before called the Mars Volta.
The Marsville.
They are the greatest band of all time. And I would like people that don't know them to go and listen to them. I'm going to recommend a deep cut just because it makes me seem cool. But there's a song called Tetragrammaton, and it's off Amputecture. It is 16 minutes long. There are more ideas in this one song than in most albums. It is absolutely lunatic mad, but it's really catchy as well. Just like everything they do, there's some hooks buried there, and it is a wonderful song. And basically, they are the most consistently brilliant band, I think, and everything they do is great. But that song,
I need to give them another chance. I saw the Mars Volta at the 10th anniversary of Teena Park in Scotland. They played a small tent. At the time, might have been 800 people in there or so. They headlined it, but it was a small tent, and I don't know. I don't know. I could never get bored. There was something about it. I'm still quite wild when I go to gigs, but I was really wild when I was young. I was like the kind of guy that wanted to jump off everything and be in the
yeah.
mosh pit all day long. And at the drive-in, Mars Volta, for whatever reason, despite how crazy they were on stage, they didn't like you being.
No, they don't want you on there. But they
No,
don't even want you moshing, really. They
no, I
just
don't
like,
like moshing. I think it told off the crowd, and it kind of put me off the vibe of that
yeah.
that particular. So maybe I've matured enough that I'm ready to give the Mars Volta another shot.
I mean, to be fair, that this is not a great introduction to them. It's like, but I mean, it'll separate.
Okay.
You might love it,
So
but
but dream like as I say, I don't know have a much of a dream headliner beyond those bands are probably too big. But let's say for the purpose of this that Cult of Luna continued their rise, and so did Julie Christmas after the Damnation Alternate shows. And in 2026, they decided to do the 10th anniversary of Mariner. Now, that would be a bit of a dream headlining situation for Damnation.
mm,
And if they were to do that, the track I'd recommend you listen to before you win is Cygnus, which is the final track, which is God tier post metal. Absolutely cut on at their best, and then Julie Christmas are demented best over the top of it. So if you've somehow not listened to Mariner yet, get your ears around that, and that final track is unbelievably good.
I mean, I rate that album as the best album of the decade. That was just the album's just unbelievable.
Best post metal album ever written.
Yeah, I mean, bloody hell. I feel like I need you to give me a week on that.
I
Fuck.
did a podcast just on that.
Yeah,
This.
yeah, yeah. We could do that. I love that sort of geeky stuff. I don't want to. I don't want to nail. I'm not saying yes to that. It needs so much more thought.
Well,
But
I,
yeah.
I will go with that claim. I really think it's something special. So, aye, that's the one for that. Overran again, James. We need to start getting better at this, son. All
Okay.
right. Until next time.
Thanks, mate. Really good. Appreciate it.